All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. Today we're going to cover another one of Andrew Yang's policy proposals. I'm your host, Cardon with Cody.
How's everyone doing?
And we're going to talk a little bit about mental health, specifically one of now Andrew Yang's 80-plus policy proposals on his website. Policy proposal number, oh gosh, I don't even know what, but he suggests to closely monitor the mental health of White House staff.
And see, I have no problem with this. I don't know enough to say I like it, but borderline, I don't dislike the idea.
Okay. This is one where I say, screw you, Andrew Yang, for pandering to freaking Democrats.
Like you said, he has 80 policies. This is one of them is screw you. It's one of 80.
You know, yeah. Well, look, if you're Yang gangers that think this guy's flawless, please comment below and tell me how I'm wrong.
Well, people got flaws, but I'm just saying.
But this
end of the world.
I hate sellouts, and this seems like a total sellout. And also, I think a lot of very dangerous legislative ideas are pulled by Republicans in the name of national security. Come on, we pass all kinds of crap. Republicans shoved every draconian 1984 by George Orwell nightmare they could into the Patriot Act for national security reasons against radical Islam.
Well,
okay,
that's exactly what I'm saying, though.
That's what Republicans do, but then Democrats do the same thing for public safety. They will legalize any bad immigration law under the guise of public safety in California, and they will ruin people's lives, their fun, and their friendships, and their ability to do anything, you know, through safety. Okay, so
I mean, like, I do admit that there's some kind of opening for abuse here, but I mean, by and large, well, very basically, if you want to get to the policy, the only opening for abuse I see personally is the fact that there is going to be an actual psychologist doing these evaluations.
Okay,
and it matters.
And this is why that's dangerous.
Well, yeah,
and I know that sounds crazy to say having a psychologist around is dangerous. I'm not a Scientologist, I promise. All right,
no, but I do see how that could get political. Because I mean, you know, to be frank, what's considered a mental illness one day might not. That's the other thing that's weird. You could be mentally ill one day and not 5 years later, and like, you know, that's relevant.
You are right. You're right up my alley. But first, in this show, we are straight shooters, and we're going to allow Andrew Yang to speak himself. So his platform says the following: working in the White House, by all accounts, is a stressful job. Agreed. It can exacerbate existing mental health issues or trigger latent ones. Also agreed. While mental health can be improved and those who suffer from issues are often productive mental members of society, look at me and Cody, staying well requires constant work. Additionally, the information that flows from the White House and the work done there is of utmost importance. Also agreed. However, this is where it gets dicey. There should be a White House psychologist group whose job it is to monitor the mental health of employees serving in the executive branch. Okay, let's see where he's going with this. All those employed, including the president, see, this is where I knew it was coming in, the anti-Trumpism. Including the president should...
How's that anti-Trump? Trump isn't the only president anyone will ever have again.
I know, and we're going to talk about this. Let me finish the sentence, though. All those employed, including the president, should undergo regular mental health evaluations, and the psychologist should be free to make recommendations as to each individual's fitness for whatever office they hold and refer people to the White House Chief of Staff. Okay. First off, there's already existing legislation for that, and it's the 25th Amendment.
Well, that's slightly different.
Oh, yes, you're right. It's not as immediate. I was about to say that this is the 25th Amendment on steroids because, and let me tell you, this...
Well, I mean, but like, I would just like to point out in this actual, the text that he wrote, written right here, he says recommendation is to each individual's fitness. I mean, there's nothing in here saying that the psychologist can't say, hey, I recommend so-and-so takes a 2-week leave.
Yes. However, if you remember all of 2019, there was a 3-week period where that one girl who'd never actually met Donald Trump but had a psychology degree had actually diagnosed him as paranoid schizophrenic and about to cause a third world war. And there was literally a call to impeach the president.
Which is against the law.
Yeah, no, it was against the law. But see, the thing is, our mainstream media is so irresponsible. They do things like that and exacerbate and stoke flames like that. Could you imagine how much worse those 3 weeks would have been had there been a White House psychologist group to consult that is going to be on whose side?
Well,
they're like, here's my problem with this, Cody. The Democrats want to delegitimize Donald Trump so badly that they've pulled out every single stop, including the 25th Amendment. And I got a problem with people trying to undo an election, okay? And I'm not going to have a body of 7 psychologists from liberal academia who don't like a president being able to just come together and say, hey, if we all vote him as unfit for office, we basically, those 7 guys now are in control of whether or not the president can do his job or be perceived as legitimate by the public. And I don't want a 7-person body undoing the election of hundreds of millions of people.
Well, I mean, further down, he mentions that the psychologist corps, they would answer directly to the chief of staff. And I would have to imagine if something, like I said, that this seems less like selling out and more a little bit politically naive because, yeah, obviously this would become one of the most hotly, I mean, I'm assuming there'd be something somewhat similar like the Supreme Court appointments for who's on that board become highly political. I'm assuming they would probably try to have an even distribution of like, but again, how do you have a Democratic psychologist and a Republican psychologist? You think it should be kind of black and white, but like I said, it seems to me a little more naive, a little bit more, because on its basic level, you throw away all of the grossness and all the insanity that politics bring. Hey, people are working some of the most important high-stress jobs in the country. Maybe we should monitor that. That sounds okay.
Now, but see, that's the thing, is that he went beyond the monitoring and the therapy, which I do think would be very wise. I mean, there was a reason why all of the Chinese emperors in the Ming Dynasty were surrounded by doctors.
Nowhere does it say here that this group of psychologists have authority.
But it says they should be free to make recommendations to each individual's fitness, which is basically a report card.
But a recommendation to the chief of staff, and the chief of staff could say, okay, duly noted.
Okay, but the way things leak, this is at best political naivete.
Exactly. I guess
it is at worst pandering to the Democrats who wish they could find a way to get rid of presidents they don't like Donald Trump.
Okay,
and by the way,
but that cuts both ways. Then there's just a built-in way for Republicans to get rid of Democrats they don't like. I mean, it doesn't. I don't see how this is a partisan issue, creating something that could potentially bring down whoever's in office, Democrat or Republican. And if this lasts 15, 20 years, 5 administrations. I mean, are there going to be 5 Trump administrations? You know what I mean? Like, this could be Democratic administrations where guys are getting removed from office because something this guy put into play. I don't see how this is a partisan issue.
Okay. Well, I see this as being far more abused by Democrats than by Republicans.
But how? Based on what? It's still
for
theoretical.
The same reason, national security arguments are far more abused by Republicans than Democrats, and safety arguments are far more abused by Democrats and by Republicans. And if this is a safety argument, it's in the realm of things that are going to get abused by Democrats a lot more than Republicans. So let's go to the science of this, however. Okay? And this is another reason why I bristle against the idea of having negative connotations around mental health and so on and so forth. Because, I mean, let's face it. When I not auditioned, but when I tried out for the soccer team at my high school, I had this British soccer coach who was a very well-renowned soccer coach. And he talked about what he needed from strikers, what he needed from midfielders, what he needed from defensemen. And he said, hey, sorry, lads, I only need like 3 of the strikers, 4 of the midfielders, so on and so forth. And he says, well, goalies, I'll always take goalkeepers because they're the only ones that are crazy enough or stupid enough to do it, right? Well, presidents, you kind of got to be crazy to want to subject your family and all of your loved ones to that much scrutiny and that much garbage from the mainstream media. And to a certain extent, if we start wanting normalcy from people expected to be abnormally good, I think we're actually screwing ourselves as a society, because guess what? Studies show that over half of U.S. presidents suffered from mental illness.
But couldn't the argument be made that perhaps if these presidents suffering mental illness were more aware of what they're undergoing, maybe they could be performing at a higher level than they did.
Yeah, like who? What? Abraham Lincoln? Should we have gotten rid of him in his first year of?
Nowhere. No, I don't know where you're reading. It says that this council.
Okay, this
has
is from
the right
Psychology
to
Today.
No, but what I'm saying though is that like if this was implemented, they don't get to just remove people. Like I said, they report to the chief of staff.
Hold on.
Whoever's in office, they report to
You
them.
say they don't get to remove people, but be honest, Cody. If it got out that the governing body of psychologists in the White House had given a writ or had voted and expressed no confidence in the mental health of the president, would that or would that not be immediate grounds for removal?
No. First of all, I think it'd be subject to literally years of hearings.
Yeah, years, yes, but ultimately would it be horrible? Okay, would it be much worse for the country?
It's a bad look, but what I'm saying though is
a bad look. You would completely immobilize and neuter the efficacy of a president until his term was up, and there's no way he could get reelected.
Okay, but
it would end his presidency.
How would it get out? His own chief of staff would have to leak
How would it get out?
His own chief of staff would have to leak it.
Yeah, oh my gosh. How would it get out? Let's look at the Pentagon Papers. Let's look at the 2,000 leaked documents from the Trump administration.
What I'm saying, though, is if people are leaking documents saying the president's crazy, I think we have bigger issues than there's 5 psychologists who monitor the health of people in the White House. Again, I would say, what, so we have to hide? Maybe our presidents are crazy. We can't know. I mean, like, that doesn't seem much smarter to me either.
Okay. At best, this is political naivete. At worst, it is pandering to Democrats.
I mean, there is some logic to it. Like I said, it's ripe for abuse. It's going to become highly politicized. Who's on that council is going to become like Supreme Court nominations as far as how politicized it is, which is absurd because, like I said, you're not a judge or a doctor. However, all this says is that there'd be people who would check out the mental health people in the White House, all different staffers, not only the president, and they report back to the chief of staff. Because at the same time, what if a Democrat's in the White House and his Democratic, Homeland Security head is like losing his mind and is crazy, or her mind. It's overworked, overstressed because some policies they implemented. Is it really so bad that they know that and then they can internally handle that? Is that so
cabinet
bad?
Members can be fired by the president anyway.
Okay, so again, this is just another way for I do agree, even inside of your own party, it can be used against people.
Yeah.
But I mean, just because
I am all for checks and balances, but this, I'm sorry, and maybe it's just, I don't know what the legal term is for things that come from a poisoned font being no good. They're tainted. Maybe because my initial reaction to this is that it seems anti-Trump and it seems pandering to Democrats' desires.
By definition, Trump would have to be out of office for this to be implemented. Trump isn't proposing it. By definition, it would be out if this is ever implemented.
Okay. Last thing I'll say before we end here is I found the study for this podcast quite intriguing. All right. That according to a study by Jonathan Davidson of Duke University Medical Center and colleagues who reviewed biographical sources for the first 37 presidents. All right. That's basically between the years 1776 to 1974. Half of those men had been afflicted by mental illness, and 27% met those criteria while in office, something that could have clearly affected their ability to perform their jobs. And I have to tell you, I would hate to have seen the United States of America without a George Washington who had a psychological episode at Kips Bay where he literally had like what many considered temporary insanity as he was angry at having seen his men shot, and he attacked the redcoats that were there. You can read that in McCullough's book, 1776. That's intriguing. But I would hate to have seen the founding of our country overseen by people who could express no confidence in a president due to mental illness. This is at best naivete in my mind, at worst pandering, and I just don't like it. This problem solver politics.